Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I swear every year I have to relearn this live streaming stuff. And I'm so paranoid because I think last year we froze like within 2 minutes of starting. So let me know in the live chat if you guys can hear me okay, if I'm freezing or if I look good. Okay, perfect. We're hearing some good stuff, loud and clear. Hello, thank you for coming. Guys, welcome to the annual happy birthday, birthday live stream Q&A. Kind of the one time a year I consistently go live. Live streaming is not really a big part of the channel, but it's always fun. I enjoy doing these once in a while, and figured the birthday had come once again. It was a good time to jump in and chat about the year, chat about what's happened so far, and mostly answer questions in the live chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment there. When I've done this in the evening, I've enjoyed a beverage, but today, an alcoholic beverage, but today it's work day, so I have Timmy's coffee, dark roast coffee, to enjoy with the live stream today. Now I just want to make sure. God, I'm so paranoid that. Yeah, okay. So for some reason, my live chat's taking a moment to update, but thank you guys for joining. Tyler Evans. Hey, Richard, happy birthday and greetings from Nova Scotia. Thank you for joining today. I appreciate you being here. Happy dude. Happy birthday. Thank you. Happy dude. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Appreciate it, guys. Yeah. And, as always, the Q&As are always tricky because every so often you'll have someone asking personal advice. I am registered as an advisor, but I don't give advice in the live chat, but feel free to ask questions about general economic stuff. What's happening in the news lately. And sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so I apologize if my voice is a little scratchy today, but double or plain and black, right in between, a single, I guess, just one milk, one sugar in the coffee. Like Timmy's coffee is not, I'm a Canadian, but Timmy's coffee is not very good, but the dark roast is not too bad. And I was swinging by, so I figured I'd grab a drink. All right, Turtle called Call Me. Q1, when do you release a financial rap single with Patrick Boyle? Collab coming. Yeah, I've heard he's been dropping my name a little bit, which, not cool. And maybe I have to address that at some point with a rap battle. But I'm going to save that heat until everyone's ready for it, I think. Happy birthday from Quebec. Thank you very much. Gravy salad. You don't go to Timmy's for coffee. You go there for extremely cheap, decent, warm food. That's right. I mean, Tim Hortons used to be better. They got bought by an international conglomerate. I don't even know if that's the right term because they own like fast food chains. They own Burger King too, I think. And then the quality really went downhill. But you get what you pay for, right? Like probably one of the cheapest lunches you can find in the area. But you get what you pay for. I'll leave it at that. That should be their slogan. I know it's like always fresh or whatever, but should be you get what you pay for. Tyler Evans, as a young CFP, I just started at a Big Five bank as a financial planner. Can you share any tips for growing your book as a new professional? So I wish I could give more pointed advice. I'm very lucky in my regard because one, the company I work for is very easygoing in terms of sales, which is very rare in the finance space. Sadly, a lot of advisor roles are really sales positions, and they really encourage you to kind of bring clients in the door. The company I work for is not like that, which I'm very fortunate with. And a lot of my job is actually to take over a book of business from someone who's looking to slowly exit the business. So, and I haven't really used the channel to promote my financial planning, in part because of that. There's already a capacity considerations on that side in terms of the books I'll be taking on. But also just, I like keeping the two separate, I like what I do. I'm proud of the work I do. Like I'm proud of the investment management we do. But I don't feel a need to really market it or push that stuff, on the channel. I like having them separate because on the channel I can kind of do things the way I want. And in my works, to their credit, they've done a very good job of allowing for that independence as best they can. There's some compliance considerations, but for the most part, they're very, very hands off, which I'm very lucky because very rare in the finance space. Let me read through some of these. It's past 7. Sorry, it took me a second. 7 p.m. in South Africa, and it's your birthday. One drink won't hurt. It's noon here, I think, and I'm doing some work after this. But happy birthday! Thank you very much. My friend just became private equity bro. Should I be concerned for his mental health in the future? Again, I don't have any experience in the private equity, but I mean, your guess is as good as mine. But maybe pray for him a little bit. Did you hear Michael Burry from Big Short is closing his hedge fund? I did hear that. Scion Capital, is that right? Seems to be alluding to some other action he's taking, like some other activity he'll be pursuing. So I don't know if it's indicative of bad performance. I haven't looked too much into it, but seems more so just some sort of transition career transition he's going through. B2 career, CPA or CFP? I want to go for my CPA. Should I do both? I live in New York City. Two very different designations, so it depends what you want to do. And that will ultimately guide which one's better. So the CPA is an accounting designation, kind of the gold standard in accounting for accountants to have. So any accounting work, definitely the one to pursue. CFP is Certified Financial Planner. I don't have my CPA. I have my CFP designation and my CFA charter. The CFP is strictly financial planning for individuals and families and the like. So it's a kind of a broad overview of a bunch of different topics: insurance, taxation, estates, investing. And it's intended for one-on-one financial planning advice. So it's just two different realms. It depends on what area you want to go down. CPA probably has a broader application in terms of the jobs you can have with a CPA, but very different job, an accountant versus an advisor, right? Happy to. Did you read the article in the Financial Times on South Korean retail investors causing big swings in U.S. markets, getting called the Squid Game market? No, I have not heard that. That's interesting, though. I think with retail investors, it's always tricky to understand what's moving the markets, because retail investors can start a trend and then that can be amplified by momentum-based funds and the like. So, but interesting. No, I hadn't heard about that. That's something to look into. Tyler Evans, absolutely, that is a rare thing in the industry. Appreciate the answer and happy birthday again. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's actually near impossible for most registered advisors to have a social media presence without kind of the full backing of their firm. Most banks will just veto it because they're such a large operation that the idea of kind of compliancing every individual who wants a social media presence it's opening a can of worms they don't really want to deal with. And B, there's a lot of liability because as a registered advisor, there's liability that comes with what I talk about online. So if I were to say something that were to be construed as advice, someone were to follow that and then lose money, there could be a responsibility there, perhaps even more so than an unregistered individual. It's a really gray area because a lot of social media stuff is not considered financial advice because it's not one-on-one advice. So if you go on a YouTube channel and you say, I like this stock, I think everyone should buy this stock, that's not generally considered a registered activity, like an activity you need to be registered to carry out. And so that doesn't fall under the legal definition of financial advice. But if I were to go to one person and say, you should buy this stock, that can be construed as advice. So it's a weird precedent. But the idea is that the one is tailoring the advice, and that's why it becomes a registered activity. And the other one is kind of a broad dissemination of information and your opinion. Let me read through some of these. I got to catch up a little bit. Just checking in to say happy birthday and thank you for spreading common financial sense to YouTube. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Chicken Keeper, happy birthday, Richard. Do you think the finance industry can be partially replaced by AI? Will some CFAs lose their jobs? I mean, not at this point. Like grunt work maybe, but so at my company, we use some AI tools, but it's more kind of on the search side of things. And we just don't trust anything that comes out, right? You search for a figure and they give you a number, but that number isn't always what you're looking for. Because you have to remember, these are our prediction models. They aren't the program doesn't understand what you're asking. It's just predicting what you're looking for, but it's not always accurate. What it is good for is the program will link the articles or the sources of that information. So it is handy in that regard, where I can look for a very specific figure, and then it'll link a source. And I almost never actually look at what the AI tells me. I just look at the source of what the AI has found, and that helps quite a bit. But definitely, I don't think it's going to replace anyone. It will augment the industry, just like many other industries, but replace, certainly not with what we currently have. Financial planning is different. I'm talking more on the analysis side. I could see some interesting tools on the kind of financial planning, but could the U.S. ever use Bitcoin as a reserve to ease long-term debt, and how would impact the dollar's reserve currency role? So good question. If the U.S. uses Bitcoin as a reserve, I don't know what the impact on the dollar reserve currency role would be. The dollar as a reserve currency is slowly decreasing. The problem with having Bitcoin as a reserve, people kind of assume, well, you put Bitcoin in the reserve and then it's going to, just grow in value and that will help all the problems. The issue is that that doesn't always happen. We're seeing that today, right? Bitcoin has fallen below $100,000. And central banks don't want that. Central banks don't want volatility. It's the same reason why central banks don't hold stocks in their foreign reserves, right? Stocks have proven a very good long-term investment, but that's not the purpose of the reserves, right? The purpose of the reserves is to have that liquidity, that cash on hand. Some countries use reserves to fix the value of their currency, right? They'll buy or sell other currencies. So they need that to be very easily accessible and not to be fluctuating day to day in value. Even if Bitcoin increases in price, that volatility alone kind of discourages that idea of using it as a reserve asset, because it's not a stable value that it has. Rusty, thank you for the super chat. Happy birthday, Richard. Love the content, man. Thank you very much. Question. I believe you mentioned the tech to finance pipeline on last year's stream. Do you know how it works? Dev who likes finance. Yeah, so there's a specific industry. So it's more on the quantitative side of finance. So different investment firms will have different investment philosophies. Some use statisticians and the like to build models. And in that realm of quantitative investing, there's a lot of demand for kind of tech engineers and the like to build these programs and models for investing and trading on a daily. Other areas, not as much of a demand, but I think. So what I probably said last year is that when I was in university, I had a finance professor say the best kind of dual major you can do is in IT and finance, because it gives you that competitive edge in the finance industry. And I'm sure there's merit to that, but I think it is certain industries are looking a lot more for those technical skills. Big Pap 90. When is the plain bagel meme coin coming out? I don't know what you're talking about meme coins. We only launch high utility coins on this channel. The bagel booty coin, or I don't remember what I called it. Let me read a couple of these. Have you ever tried options trading yourself? No, not really. Like I've bought and sold options, but not like day trading. And in fact, it's usually sell because some way or another a client ends up with an option and we look to exit. But no, not really an area I pursue. Bagel coin is backed by a bagel reserve in Montreal. That's right. Yeah. Truth. Do you think that amount of passive investors skews the market? Meaning because of number of people buying broad market indexes, it becomes overvalued and it stops being sound investment strategy. I actually covered this. It would have been years ago, like probably 5 years ago. There's kind of this growing concern of that. There was this ETF bubble kind of concern. It's been a while since I've reviewed that idea, but I think it ultimately landed on the idea that it doesn't really matter how many people are holding an investment. The value of a stock is determined at the margin. So the buys and sells of investors that day, and that can be a very small float to move the price of the stock. So you don't need a lot of the outstanding shares of a stock to be changing hands for its price to be impacted. So I think and again, I haven't reviewed the research, but back then, sort of the conclusion we came to was, yes, if it continues to escalate, if we see more and more passive flows, this could eventually become a thing. But right now, there's ample active trading of these stocks to impact their valuations. But then there's other considerations like the index inclusion effect, right? The idea that when a stock enters the S&P 500, that its price increases, but that might be a self-fulfilling prophecy as well. Let me see here. I think my chat is frozen, but I'm now loving myself. Happy birthday. Thank you very much. Yep, there we go. For some reason, updated super quickly all of a sudden. Let's see. The investor. You live in Canada, right? Do you speak French? No. If not, I recommend you use and all in on Duel. But seriously, any option on that stock? Any opinion on stock? Sorry. I haven't looked into Duel, Duolingo. I've used them. So my family is actually on the one side French. My mother is Francophone. It's a big disappointment on on their side that I'm not fluent in French, but I'd love to learn French. It's hard to find the time, but if I were to have all the time in the world, definitely I'd be putting more effort into learning French. I had used Duolingo for a period of time trying to learn French, and then that kind of fell off. But let's see here. Bull run. How is the Canadian economy growing? Good question. I haven't looked too much into broad stuff. You know what? Actually, Mark, our government just released their budget. I know there's a lot of infrastructure spend. I still haven't taken the time to go through it, which is kind of a poor reflection on my part. But I want to pursue CFA, but I've heard it's not something that has career growth, or it's better to have low ambition for growth, and it's very saturated. Happy birthday and love your content. Yeah, I mean, it depends, right? So it's definitely a competitive industry, finance. The CFA, I think, is, if you want to work in finance on the analysis side, I think you should pursue a CFA. That's kind of my own opinion. And I've seen it's almost a bit of a bare minimum for a lot of these companies. It's a lot of effort, though, too. So if you want to be an analyst, it's something worth pursuing. But will finance jobs exist in 5 years? Yes. Many, many happy returns. What's your views on 100% allocation to gold? Can gold demand be brought down again like 2011, 2015? It could. Good question. Again, I can't give much. I don't give much advice on these, but gold, again, it's a speculative asset. I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but it is a speculative asset, right? People buy it because of its financial use, not because of any other purpose. I always like to highlight that palladium is 30 times more rare than gold, has many similar properties, and even more industrial use. So it has more commodity value, and yet it trades at like a third of the price of gold. So it's not just the rarity of gold that makes it have the value price that it does. It's that social inertia. I often use that term, but really it's a socialized, gold is just a concept, man. Like the value of gold, it really is a societal concept, right? Because we are taking this thing, we're designating this as a financial asset, and then demand on that thing comes from that designation. Palladium gain. To be clear, I'm not a palladium investor. I like that example to highlight, because a lot of people, they have this mental model of like, if something is scarce, its value will increase mathematically, right? And they have this kind of framework that, quantity of dollars increases, this thing's scarce, therefore its price will equal X or increase over time. And it's a bit more complicated than that, because you have situations like palladium and gold where one's much more rare than the other, and it trades at a fraction of the price, right? That's the only reason I highlight that. Have you seen Ben Felix's Rational Reminder podcast, where they cover passive investing's dilemma? Market efficiency is not the question. What are your thoughts about it? I have not seen that, although great podcast. Two very, very smart guys hosting that. Michael Jorgensen. Happy birthday. I'm curious to your view on investing in perspective to climate change. Do you think about this in your own investments, or has it changed anything about the way you invest? So our company is not a green investing company. However, we view climate related stuff as a risk factor. And I know that, there's kind of the issues with ESG definitions and stuff. But we do consider that in the sense that a company that is, say, a high polluter, uses forced labor, just as a, bad example, but those are companies that are likely to face a lot of regulatory risk over time, right? As regulations crack down and advance and look to eliminate these practices, those companies will be hurt. So that's a risk consideration as an investor. So it kind of aligns to find good companies that treat people well and are generally green, versus kind of high polluters and the like. I definitely wouldn't say it's a high priority or consideration, but it is a consideration. It's something we don't want to invest in diabolical polluters, right? That are destroying communities, because that is going to lead to a crackdown. That's a risk of that company's operations. That might be heartless. That's not my intent, but that's my role as a portfolio manager, right? My role as a portfolio manager is to preserve capital of our investors. So that's how we view that. Just dropping in to say I love your videos. Thank you very much. Keep up the great work. Appreciate that. Thank you for coming by. Let's see. Bagel or donut or waffle? Get out of here with that. Happy birthday, Richard. Any chance on reviewing financial economic books like you do with films? I have covered... I had an old video. It's like 5 of my favorite investing books. I have read more since then. A couple more. I don't know if I highlighted it in that video, but Debt the First 5,000 Years is a really, really good book in terms of if you want to jump down the rabbit hole of like, what is money? Because I read the Bitcoin Standard. Yes, I read that. I got kind of tired of the argument of like, oh, you just don't understand. Like, so I'm not a Bitcoin bear. I'm not a Bitcoin bear. I just think that people are highlighting arguments for Bitcoin that are not true, right? In terms of why it's increasing in value. It's not really this fundamental adoption of its use case. And that's fine. That's just the reality of it, right? It's not a political opinion on it. But a lot of people were highlighting, well, you have to read the Bitcoin Standard. You have to read the Bitcoin Standard. So I eventually read it, and it was interesting. The first part was interesting. I really liked the history part of it. That was my favorite part of the book. They highlight history of money over time, and then they kind of dive into arguments of why fiat currency is doomed to fail and why fiat currency is so bad. The problem I have with the Bitcoin, and I've actually, so to this question, I've debated doing a video on the Bitcoin Standard, because I really didn't like it. The reason being that so much of the book just makes sort of these huge leaps in assumptions, I guess. It makes these massive assumptions and these assertions with no backing for it. So one example is they argue that like fiat currency is literally correlated to like the declining ethics and values of society. Like the idea that as countries adopt fiat currencies, people just become more unethical. Like they make that argument and they argue that money is the reason for that thing. And there's a quote in it. I don't have the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of like Beethoven's, symphony was created in the time of, hard money, like this idea of like fixed supply money. Miley Cyrus's twerks were invented in the era of fiat currency. Like that's the justification they make for like fiat currency being bad for society. And it's like, okay, well, that's a bit of an oversimplification. Like there's, sexual liberation of society and things of that sort that might factor in as well. But sure, we can assume that that their money's the only reason for these things. So that's why I found difficult about the book. Like I think for understanding Bitcoin, it does a good job. It does a good job of explaining the network and things like that. But those arguments and things about like society and how society is shaped by its money, it made too many stretches for my liking. But that book did lead me to Debt the First 5,000 Years, which dives more into the history of money. And it's by a guy who's not an economist. He studies the history of human civilizations. And he just recounts basically how money has developed in different societies over time. And one of the key takeaways for me, sorry, I'm going on about this question. I'll move on to other questions in a moment. But one of the takeaways for me is he argues that there's not this linear progression of money like many people assume. People assume we used to have barter, And then that didn't work. So we switched to precious metals, and then that was tough to transact in. So then we switched to coinage, and then we switched to fiat currency, right? And then that kind of leads to the argument that Bitcoin is the next money. What this book argues is that money has historically fluctuated between commodity money and fiat currencies or non-backed currencies. And that fluctuation back and forth typically revolves around trust in society or trust in, well, just levels of trust in society, sorry. So the higher the level of trust, the more fiat currencies prosper and the more civilizations can prosper. And the lower the level of trust, the more you see commodity money take over because you don't trust who you're transacting with. So you rely on commodities to carry out, to maintain that value. So it's a really interesting book, really good book. Really quite liked it. Yeah, sorry, I got to catch up on some of that. Kenny Wen, is coping FOMO on BTC by buying a small portion of it makes sense in your point of view? I myself own 5% of Bitcoin since I have the feeling of fearing missing out on the growth of Bitcoin despite it being irrational. I mean, so that's the thing, right? Is my view is everyone has to make that decision for themselves whether they want to hold Bitcoin or not. I don't hold it personally. I know many people that do. You have to make that decision, but definitely, if you do hold it, just recognize that there are risks that are often overlooked by a lot of people. You have kind of this dangerous movement where it's kind of a religion, right? And all downside is sort of irrelevant to them, and they don't highlight that. I've seen Bitcoin called a risk-free asset, which is ridiculous. So as long as you're aware of those arguments, and really the point of all the videos I've highlighted is just to present both sides, like the other arguments, I guess. But yeah, there's something to, in terms of whether you should buy it over fear of missing out. Yeah, it's generally I wouldn't encourage buying anything out of fear of missing out, but I buy it for like the reason of, you have to make the investment thesis for the buy, right? Don't buy something just because it's increased in price. Buy it because you have an underlying thesis and the price is something you're willing to pay for it. Happy birthday, big dog. May you get blessed by all of life's blessings. Thank you so much. That's very sweet. I'm going to take a sip and pull up one of these questions. About investing in growth companies, they're usually priced at a premium and rarely get cheap. How do you decide when to invest in such a company when you really believe in it? Yeah, I mean, that's been the challenge for the last few years, right? Something to consider with valuations and growth. So, I invest in some growth companies. I consider myself like growth at a reasonable price, but I think some people misconstrue that as like, you have a cap on the PE you'll pay for a company. That's not necessarily the case. I think growth investing at a reasonable price, you consider how an investment will play out, even if you see a contraction of the multiple, right? So just as an example, and this is a crude example, but just stay with me. If you have a company that say every year is consistently growing 20%, but they're trading at like a 40 times multiple, the standard value investor might say, well, 40 times is expensive for a stock. I don't know if that 20% growth will continue into the future. If you have high conviction that growth will continue, then you can kind of calculate out with 20% growth. If we saw, say, that 40 times multiple drop to 20 times, what kind of return could I expect over, say, 10 years if that 20% growth continued? And even with that contraction, you might find that you earn a solid return. So those are things to consider as well. But yeah, definitely a tough area. Humphrey Yang, happy birthday. Love your videos. Thank you very much, Humphrey. Thanks for dropping by and saying hi. Happy birthday. I've been learning from your videos since 2019. Thank you for what you do. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Release the files. I don't know what you're talking about. wrong social media account. In what aspect do you see being in a bubble? In theory, couldn't anyone just keep investing in all assets to keep high prices to avoid a bubble, since the country is at a high time debt, all-time high debt is what I'm guessing. Good question, man. Yeah, I mean, so things to consider, right? On the one hand, we have sell-offs like today, where part of that, there's other factors, right? It's not just who's all investing. It's what the liabilities of those investors are. There's things like liquidity in the market. So we've seen liquidity in the market decrease quite a bit recently. You might have heard of stuff like the repo market kind of drying up. Some kind of mistaken takes on that, but it is true that we're seeing liquidity decrease. And what that means is that investors are either becoming more risk adverse or they're having less access to cash, or using it for other methods outside of safer loans. So that eventually will feed into other areas if it continues, and means that investors will likely decrease valuations and for higher risk stocks. But yeah, it's a very it's a very high level question. I don't know if I can answer it properly, but Ronald Pisado, how do you feel about prediction markets like Kalshi? I actually just commented on an Advisor Upside newsletter article on this exact topic. So those markets are actually banned in Ontario. So where I live in Canada, these prediction markets are banned because they don't fall under current legislation. So the government just took the step to ban these platforms in the meantime. In the US, it's controversial because it's federally regulated by the CFTC. So they've made the argument that they're not a gambling website. They are a contract kind of derivative site that should fall under the CFTC, which means states don't have the authority to legalize it or criminalize it, I guess. And I think it's dangerous in the sense that it's sort of the continuation of the gamification of investing, right? You have people who have very valid concerns about investing of traditional finance, the traditional financial industry, and they have, they have this distrust of like traditional investing, insider trading, things like that. And this kind of pops up as like an alternative, I guess. And it's being, you saw Robinhood is now offering this as an option on their platform, right? I think that's dangerous because it kind of blurs the line between gambling and investing. Yes, you can do your research and maybe have an edge on one of these bets, but the idea of consistently profiting seems very slim. And yeah, I don't know. I don't like it. I'm cautious of it. Geez. Let me go through some of these. Sorry, I told myself I wouldn't spend as long answering questions so I could read more comments, and here I am falling behind quite a bit. Thank you for all your content. What are your thoughts on financial literacy education for younger people? When to start? What to focus on? Does it even matter? Yeah, I mean, one of the best things I don't know if you're speaking from the perspective of a younger person or you have kids or the like, but definitely something to like the idea of spending and debt management, all that stuff are very good skills to have very early on, right? If you're a teenager, those are skills that you can be developing or just learning about, right? Learning about credit scores and things like that. Let's go through some of these. Have you ever reached out to Atrioc? I think you guys, I am somewhat familiar with Atrioc. I haven't watched a lot of his content, but you guys are mentioning him a lot in the comments. So I'm guessing I saw his circular financing video. So and he's funny. Like the video I saw was very funny and pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I'm always cautious with collaborations because of, what's happened in the past with some finance creators. But yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to meet other people and chat with them about potentially collabing. Happy birthday. I like to consume finance / economy related content online. What solid, relatively unbiased other creators than yourself can you recommend? For economics, I've talked about him all the time. Kind of biased because I've spoken to him offline. Well, not offline, but off of YouTube. But Money Macro, it's run by Yuri Shasvoort. He's I think still a professor in the Netherlands. He might be doing YouTube full time now, but he has formal education in economics. He's taught economics at an institution, and he covers a lot of interesting economic topics, like a lot of the trade war stuff and things like that. So really smart guy. And I've actually passed some content by him before. Not to say he's like, signed off on my content, but I've asked him questions and he's been a great resource for me. So definitely I can't recommend him enough. Happy birthday. I have a question. What is something you regret learning too late or you wish you learned sooner about investing? That's a good question. I feel like I learned about investing at a good time. I started my career in finance, right? So right when I started making money, I was learning to invest. So I'm very lucky in that regard. And even before that, like my parents put me in a GIC and a government bond I think I got for my birthday when I was growing up. So, I had some exposure to investing as a kid, but I didn't really fully understand it until I studied it and started working. But something I regret learning too late. I mean, like as an analyst, I've learned a lot through trial and error. Some stuff like I think one thing that I've had a hard lesson on is putting too much faith in historical performance. There have been companies that are like dividend aristocrats, meaning they've consistently paid a dividend for a long period of time, and I've invested in them, and then it pivots 180. Like all of a sudden their dividend gets cut, they stop paying a dividend, they fall a good amount. So that's something that I had to teach myself again. The history of a company matters because it shows management skill and things like that, but you can't sort of project that into the future without justification, right? So that's one example I would give. I've seen some people argue that the reason Bitcoin increases in price is because everything else in the world isn't fixed in quantity and is getting devalued versus Bitcoin. What do you think of that? No, money's just not that simple. And certainly there's other stuff that's fixed in quantity. What about NFTs, right? The whole point of an NFT was quite literally, this is a one of a kind. That doesn't inherently give it value. So no, it's more complicated than that. There's things like flows, institutional demand, momentum traders. There's all these factors that aren't fundamental to the use case of Bitcoin that are going to impact its price. So no, it's not that simple. That can certainly be part of a thesis around Bitcoin, but it's not as simple as Bitcoin's price is increasing because everything else is falling in value. And also the idea that, on a given day, like something would fall like 5 or 10%, everything else has fallen 5 or 10% in value is just obviously not true. Hi birthday, Richard. I've been watching your videos since 2018. Wow. Right on, a real one. That's when I launched the channel, I think. So thank you very much for hanging on this whole time. Your videos have kept my fear in check, especially during the 2022 sell-off. Thank you. Oh, I'm honored. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's say that. This guy gives horrible advice. Be safe and save for 30 years and then be rich. After that, I want to be rich now. Yeah, well, I mean, you're welcome to pursue that. That's okay. We take negative criticism here too. We take all the feedback. Birthday crashing the market. Yeah, sorry guys. That's my bad. I shouldn't have turned another year old. Turning 32, by the way, for those unaware. Let's see. Value at least requires utility and scarcity, I assume. I think the open question on crypto is utility. Utility is doing a lot of work there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about the broader crypto kind of ecosystem. I think we have to see a lot more scaling of that utility before it kind of cements its place. But that certainly could be happening. And like I covered DeFi, the idea of DeFi a while ago, and kind of highlighted some risks and issues. But I think the idea of like someone launches a successful cryptocurrency is certainly possible. Like if you have a good idea and a good kind of system around it, great. It's just there's kind of this inflated, like any new technology like AI, right? You have a lot of people rush into the space and then a few might stick around, but unlikely that you see the area take off like expected. Dwayne Session, thank you for the super chat. Hi birthday. I was considering becoming a financial advisor. Then I hear that it can be automated. Is financial advisory still a growing field? That I don't know high level if it's a growing field. I would say that even at the company I work for, there's still plenty of demand for the stuff we do. I think people are going to have a hard time replacing stuff. Like, frankly, this argument of advisors being replaced has been around well before AI. Like, since I've started in my career, I've heard about advisors being replaced. And I think there's definitely been a trend towards DIY investing. So it's definitely been an impact, but not for the reason people are saying, which is people are saying, well, advisors can just be replaced with a program. Well, they were able to be replaced by a program, if you're being quite literal, for a decade at this point, right? I think the reason they haven't is that people still value having human and human input on their situation, right? Kenny, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. Any advice about Irish domiciled ETFs for non-US residents wanting to invest in US index funds? No, sorry. I should read these before I click them. Just because I don't want to disappoint people to highlight their question, just say, oh, sorry. Patrick Boyle is a great finance YouTuber too. Yep, I think he's great. Patrick's, for me, it's this is not to say that finance channels need to have that professional background to put out good content. I think a lot of great content comes from people who are just sharing their experience and are honest about it being their experience. But, because I work in the industry, I don't usually watch that content. I look for people who have more experience or different education than I have. And so Patrick Boyle, Money and Macro are two examples of channels I really think do a good job. Let's take a look at some more of these. He's a great hip hop YouTuber. I've heard. Happy birthday. I've invested for about 3 years now. Congratulations on getting started. Why do so many investors chase complicated products and strategies when just buying and holding a global index fund is so easy? That's so... Speaking of YouTubers, Ben Felix has really been having it with the covered call ETF community. I've actually chatted with him about this topic, but yeah, the unfortunate, we're at a point where I think we have more ETFs than we have individual stocks. So there are a wider array of strategies for investing in stocks, which I guess makes sense, than the stocks themselves that you can buy in. And the issue is that companies are just financial engineering different augmentations to attract more buyers, right? Because from the ETF company's perspective, yes, index investing might have been how they got popular, but they want to cast as broad of a net as they can to capture any sort of investor out there. Because if there's an investor out there who says, I want to buy the S&P 500, but without this company, then if they find an ETF that has that exact combination, great. They've bought one more investor. And the idea, yes, ETFs are expensive to run, but if you get enough demand, the marginal cost of launching a new ETF to get more investors is it's great payoff, right? So you have to be careful because companies are a good investment strategy doesn't have to be complicated, but companies are profiting by continually launching more and more complicated strategies. Julian Joseph, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. I'm going to stay on for another, what time is it? 13 minutes or so, kind of around 1 p.m. Call it quits and get back to working. But no, I appreciate you guys coming by again, I don't think I'll live stream more often than once a year. This is kind of a good amount to chat with people, and I apologize if I don't get to your questions. I had told myself this year I'd have someone moderate my chat so I could actually get to more people and have them keep me on top of reading more comments, but alas, do not get that organized this time. Take a look through some of these. Hey, birthday tomorrow's my birthday too. Hey, right on. Congratulations. I don't know why I said that. Congratulations on getting older, buddy. I'm right there with you. Happy birthday, Richard. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Let's see here. Happy birthday to channel. Not quite the channel. This is personal birthday. I think my channel's birthday is in August. I think we're 8 or 9 years old at this point. I'm older than 8 or 9, just to be clear. Hi, Richard. I love your videos. Thank you for the super chat, Brian. Do you have any advice for other aspiring finance YouTubers? Man, I get this question a lot, and I wish I knew what I was doing more so I could give good advice. A lot of it has been trial and error. I hate looking at my older... Oh, sorry, Julian. I did not see... I highlighted your question, but there was there's no text there. But if you comment again, just a normal chat, you don't have to super chat, I will try and highlight it and answer your question. So I'll look for your comment and I'll try to get to it. I don't know why that didn't show up. Sorry about that. But I'll look for your name. Yeah, advice. I don't know. Just post. Look out there, see what there is, see how you can do things differently. But if you add value in the space, I always encourage people to go for it. I know a lot of professionals who have thought about entering the space. I always highlight that you have to be careful going into it with a marketing first mindset. A lot of companies are how do we get into the social media space? And the thing I usually highlight is that, look, I don't think it works that way. I don't think you can build trust by starting off as a marketing, strategy effectively. Some companies have done it successfully, but it's a really hard sell to be I'm a finance company. I'm going to try and build trust with people and advertise my service while I'm doing it. I think go into it, add value to your audience, and Like that's the best you can do, right? It doesn't have to be amazing quality. One thing I would say is lighting. Technically, lighting is such an important thing that I learned. Like you can have the best camera and your video will look like crap if you don't have good lighting. So definitely invest in lighting if you want to do like a full production. But you don't need like, I had a very cheap setup. My setup was like under $200 or $300 when I started. You can tell, but you know, that's how I got started, right? Okay, there's your question. Given that AI is now framed as a national security priority, does that extend to the lifespan of the bubble since US can't realistically afford to lose the AI race? Yeah, good question. I mean, government intervention will certainly impact the area, right? Like if the government continues to support the area. There's a whole bailout comment that came out right as I was putting up my video, and then, you know, they kind of walked back those statements, so I didn't bother like rush out a quick update for that. But yeah, I mean, certainly the government can kind of prop up any industry and that can cause problems. But, you know, ultimately, the government also doesn't want to make bad investments, right? Because that also drags on their own finances. So government finances are different than household finances, but they matter. And, you know, if you put too much money into the system, that's inflation and things like that. Good audio is the most important thing to make good YouTube videos. Audio is important too. Definitely invest in I mean, again, I didn't have a very good mic for, like, my mic was like $30 for the longest time. You can tell. Again, you can tell as I've updated my stuff and I've learned what I'm doing. Cause it's all trial and error on my part, but, yeah, I mean, good microphone you can get for not too much money. Just do a bit of research and, good lighting, like not expensive lighting, but just make sure that you have proper, you know, there's kind of the 3-way light system that people have of like a key light, I think, filler light, and background light, or I don't know what's properly called, but I'm forgetting. I agree that lighting is an easy way to make it look very professional, even with an iPhone. That's right. I mean, iPhone cameras have like are great at this point, right? Marco Rubio, do you own any alternative investments like Pokemon or collectibles? Thanks for your question, Marco Rubio. No. Not as investments. Like I might have a collectible somewhere, but not like as an investment. No. Is S&P 500 buy and hold still the best strategy, and will it be the future? I don't know. Maybe. It's tricky because of the concentration, right? Like 10 companies make up like 40% of the index now. I don't invest just in the S&P 500. It's been a great strategy. I think index investing is still a good strategy for a lot of people. But you have to be aware of those risks, and you have to be aware of the type of call you're making when you buy the S&P 500, right? I think people, unfortunately, they buy the S&P 500 and they sort of wipe their hands clean. They're like, I didn't have to make an investment decision. I just bought the market. But the S&P 500 is really a bet on US large cap stocks, right? That might work out, but that is an active investment you are making, an active bet you're making. So you have to kind of own that, right? You can't just ignore it and pretend that you're doing a perfect passive investing. Now, the US market is representative of a good chunk of the global stock market. I think they're over half the global stock market in terms of market value. So, you know, you are, and there's global companies with diversified operations, but just something to consider, right? I think some people buy the S&P 500 to shut off and not think about it, but you have to own the decision that you're making. Happy birthday, man. What do you think about the CFA in the investment banking sector? Don't know much about the investment banking sector, but I imagine CFA is still worthwhile in that area. Hi Plane. What do you think of the capital assets pricing model? Munger used to call it stupid. Yeah, I mean, it's dated. You know, it's good from a theoretical standpoint, but you don't see it used much in practical terms. I've used it for calculating expected returns. Equity, the cost of equity in cash flow models before. So I've used CAPM before for equity. I'm getting lost in my terminology. For discounted cash flow models, I've used CAPM as part of the calculation, but it's not something that like we you know, for expected returns or things like that you would use too much. Mario, thank you for the super chat. For a young investor already using factor tilts and leverage, what are the next strategies to consider for taking on more long-term compensated risk for youngsters? I mean, if you're already using factor tilts and leverage, I don't know what else there is. Like, I think you have to be careful not to over-engineer investing, right? It's okay that you just turn up the input on. Oh, I'm just getting a comment here. African crypto warlord. Turn up the input on your mic, the LED part on your mic. Is this better? Sorry, have I been quiet this whole time? You guys said I was crystal clear. God, we're almost done and I'm just fixing that. Thank you for for the comment. Yeah, CAPM is used for WACC in valuations. That's what I was trying to get to. Thank you for putting it in words. Happy birthday. Oh, yay. Happy birthday. I watched all your videos. Much better. Guys, come on. Damn it. I'm at the end of the live stream and I relied on you guys. Yikes. Okay. Well, maybe next year. Maybe next year I'll learn how to do it properly. Okay, well, thank you for joining anyway. I got 5 more minutes, so I'll ask a few or answer a few more questions. But how do you think demographic pressure, people getting older, and AI will affect jobs in financing? I'm doing accounting myself, maybe, so I want to know if it might have negatives. I mean, like I would think that would increase the demand for finance. Like you typically see people engage with advisors as they get older. AI, tougher to say, but I don't think it'll have as pronounced of an impact on finance. Maybe kind of the more of the grunt work, like I said, but how to hedge against tech and AI overweighted ETFs. You can look into things. It's not, again, financial advice, but there are alternatives like equal weight ETFs where you put less weight on large cap stocks and more weight on smaller medium cap stocks. More international, right? Other countries don't have as much weight as the US, but again, that's a decision you have to make. Richard, can someone with a mental disability possibly study any of the CFP, CFA, etc.? I mean, it depends on what it is, right? I like finance overall, and you and Ben Felix. I also had the finance bachelor's. I mean, if you did the finance bachelor's, I don't see why not. But I don't know your situation. How do I tell if funds? The minor. Thank you for the super chat. How do I tell if a fund's fees are high when FX hedging is included? My Thai bank offers an IBB feeder with FX hedge at 1.2% APR. That's pretty expensive. But I don't know what's normal, right? For Thailand. That's expensive though. Usually like in the US where, naturally, and Canada even, naturally it's a more, I would expect a larger market, financial market, sorry. It's, 10, 20 basis points sometimes that you see because of FX. I actually don't even know what the figure would be, but it's not that much. That's a huge fee. But that comes with currency risk maybe as well. Alex Wong. Hi, Richard. This is not a question, but I want to thank you for bringing all this content in the YouTube space. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. How are you so rich, handsome, and successful? Maybe one of those is right, but I appreciate it. I'll let you guys guess which one. If you could do a bachelor's, you'll have no problem with, that was my thought in terms of the mental disability question. I think if you can do a bachelor's, I don't see why you couldn't do one of those. CFA is definitely tougher than the CFP, and I haven't done the CPA, but I mean, if you can do a bachelor's, I don't see why not. 2 more questions and then I'll have to sign off. But hi, Richard. Any tips for someone trying to break into equity research? How difficult is it for someone with limited professional finance experience? It can be tough. One thing I talk to a lot of students who are trying to enter the finance industry. I go to a lot of like my old universities, like networking events and stuff like that with students. One thing I always highlight is if you want to do research, if it's a passion of yours and you want to kind of get your foot in the door, look into doing research yourself, right? In your spare time. If you can put together a research report for stock you like, then you have something you can bring forward as an example of your work. It doesn't have to even be that good of a recommendation, right? I got hired on a bad recommendation on JP Morgan. I think I said to sell the stock based on I did a very fine calculation and it was like within 10% of the stock price. And I was like, well, it's over that. So, we are going to sell it. And then of course, JP Morgan's been a huge winner. But the point was I was able to show a process and my company kind of acknowledged, well, we can teach him how to invest, right? We can teach him how to research. He's got the technical skills. We can teach kind of the philosophy and stuff like that. And what I would suggest is there are student funds that will publish their research publicly. And you can kind of take a stock and base it off of one of the published research reports that will help kind of, you can, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. you don't want to copy the research they're doing. Like you don't want to do the same company and just copy and paste what they did, but you can take the framework of what they've done for researching this stock and apply it to a different company. Something I definitely suggest. It's a lot of work, but Bresto, thank you for the super chat. Variable or fixed mortgage? I do fixed. Some people would argue variable. So in Canada, everything's variable effectively every 5 years at least. You have to update your rate on your mortgage. Companies don't lend for a full 30 years like they do in the US. But I do fixed just because for a budgeting standpoint, it's less risk. Yes, you can get a discount if you do variable, but for me, I like the more consistent budgeting. That's personal choice. It's not even, I would say, like explicitly the advice I'd give to someone based on their situation. But okay, last thing. That was I'll give that an extra question because that was a super chat. But let's see. I'm gonna pick one more question here. Gotta pick one more. It's a lot of pressure. Smash your faces on the like button. Thank you, African crypto warlord. That's my advice. I went to click another one and that one popped up. I'll do this one and one more. What impact do you think demographics and aging population will have on returns in the coming decades? Good question, man. Like demographics matter. There's a Canadian economist, I think, who is famously quoted saying demographics explain 2/3 of everything, I think was the quote. I don't know enough about it in terms of, it'll impact different areas. So, you have people retiring, where is their money invested? But I don't have the high level answer there. Sorry. This was the one I was going to answer, and then I'm done for the live chat. Beaton, how confident were you after you graduated university with your finance degree? I am a fourth year and am not too confident in my knowledge of finance. Did you do any extra research while in school? I can empathize with that. I had a somewhat similar experience where, I did a lot of research in university, like you research companies, but then like in terms of having the whole comprehensive view of like investment research, it just wasn't there when I graduated. And I was like, I have some technical skills, but like, I don't know, like I can look at a stock, and I can tell you what the different things say, but like, I don't know how to make the ultimate judgment of like, yes, this is a buy or no, this is not. So working in the industry definitely filled those gaps. So I started at one finance company in the back office, but while I was there, I spoke a lot with the finance department, and eventually worked into more on the investing side of the business. And that's where I really learned the most of my investing knowledge and stuff like that. So it is unfortunate that the technical skills, even the CFA is to the same extent, right? Like the CFA teaches technical skills, but it'll say like, these are all the things, but it's up to you to prioritize which ones matter and which ones don't. Right. So, it is a tough call, but that's where I'll stop it for today. Thank you everyone for coming for the annual live stream. I'm sorry the microphone was quiet for the first 5/6 of this video, but I appreciate you guys toughing through it. I will try to make sure next year is better. Every year we're learning, right? Don't know. I think our quality is probably staying a bit flat, but I appreciate you guys popping by and saying hi. A few more videos planned for the rest of the year. I will probably take a break in January, as I typically do, but kind of regular once every 2 weeks. We'll do a video on the channel, and yeah, I'll leave it there. Happy holidays, guys, as they come up. I know not quite in that season yet, but since we're live, I'll say I hope you guys have a good holiday season in December, and yeah. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay safe out there, guys.